Welcome to our program, Dr. Jamal Nizal.
Thank you.
Dr. Jamal, my first question is about the situation in Europe concerning the Palestinian approach to the United Nations. How do you see the European support for this Palestinian move, and how do you see the Palestinian movement activity in order to garner support for such a step?
On the one hand, there is a fury of activity on the Palestinian level in Europe, both on the diplomatic level as well as on the level of the civil society, which I will talk to you later about. But first of all, there are encouraging signs on the public opinion level. There have been two polls showing a great support on the European street for the Palestinian cause and for the Palestinian bid to seek recognition at the UN. There is a leading EU countries support Palestinian statehood bid in UN. A survey taken on behalf of the global political web movement Avaza show a majority of citizens in support of the recognition of the future Palestinian state in France, Great Britain and Germany. And there's another poll by the BBC which shows that across the 19 countries surveyed, 49% of the people supported the proposal, while only 21% said their government should oppose the Palestinian move in the United Nations. We feel encouraged by the great deal of support for the Palestinian idea to go to the United Nations, and to say the truth, we've worked hard to reach this level, and international important institutions have certified us the ability to become a state. You may recall the report of the IMF and the World Bank, the UN, and also statements from the donor countries. They all have said that we have worked hard to make the necessary arrangements to become a state. They have certified that the Palestinian financial and political institutions are ready to become an independent state. So these factors meet together to tell us today that there is a big chance that our move in the UN will be supported and will be successful.
So Jamal, some of the European governments, or let me say the majority of the European governments, are still undecided whether to support the Palestinian move, the Security Council, or not. Especially the United States administration has started working in order to convince the countries represented in the Security Council to reject that.
Well, the discussion among the European countries are, as far as we are informed, they are still going on. Also, there are talks between the Palestinian side and the European countries. But the European countries are most likely to support this move, and I think the European countries will have to ask themselves a couple of very important questions when it comes to voting against or for the Palestinian state or the membership of Palestine at the United Nations. First question is, do they want to keep the two-state solution alive? If they vote no, I don't think there will be a great basis for them to say that they support the establishment of a Palestinian state. Second question is, what's about their position to the Arab Spring? If they do not support Palestine to become a state, how can they go to the Arab countries and tell them that they favor freedom of speech, democracy, and liberty in Arab countries? A third question is, what's about the 1 billion euro in aid that the European countries have paid to the Palestinian Authority ever since it was established? What will happen to this money if the two-state solution, if the notion of the two-state solution fails? And another important question is, will the European countries be able to create a certain balance between the European values and the European interests? How can they avoid a double standard if they do not support the idea of the Palestinian state? All these questions lead us to believe that the majority of the European countries will support the idea of ourselves becoming a member, a non-member state of the United Nations, especially because the idea of bilateral recognition will be left to the European countries on the individual level to decide. So we believe it's not going to be really difficult to the majority of the European countries to support this move.
The Israeli campaign against the Palestinians in this respect is at its peak today. How this Israeli campaign perceived by the European countries, and on the other hand, what is the Palestinian movement's approach in Europe in order to refute the Israeli claims and the Israeli allegations?
There is a big deal of support and understanding on the European part for for this peaceful move undertaken by the Palestinian Authority. As President Abbas said, this is a peaceful move. This is the diplomatic path. This is the diplomatic avenue. This is the peaceful approach to things. And people in Europe are likely to think that this is the right way to do. We have a long time ago approached the whole matter in a peaceful way. We have come to peaceful negotiations, and I think the majority of the European countries favor this approach by the Palestinian people. As you recall, the PLO itself abandoned what the European countries used to call terrorism many years ago. Now, if you have judged us for using violent means to go about our objectives, you are most advised to support a peaceful movement like the one that we are doing now in the United Nations.
When we come back here next year, we can have an agreement that will lead to a new member of the United Nations. 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 An independent, sovereign state of Palestine. An independent, sovereign state of Palestine. Sovereign state of Palestine. An independent, sovereign state of Palestine, living in peace with Israel.
Here the Israeli officials threaten of tearing off all the accords signed with the Palestinian Liberation Organization unless the Palestinians back down on this move. How such threats are seen abroad?
Well, it is well understood here in Europe that the Palestinians have delivered. They have delivered on their commitments in the roadmap. We have done our part. The Israelis have never lived up to their commitments when it comes to the signed agreements with them. They have violated each and every agreement that we have signed with them, and we have lived up to our own obligations in our best interest. We've done this to serve the interest of our people. Look at the law and order maintained in the Palestinian areas. Look at what we have achieved by doing this. There have been, in spite of the ongoing economic crisis that has been inflicted on us a couple of months ago, we have been able to achieve very important steps on the economic and financial level in Palestine, improving the quality of life of our people by living up to our commitments. This message has reached Europe. There is a big understanding in Europe for us, and there is a big deal of respect for what President Abbas is doing now.
The International Quartet envoy stated, Mr. Tony Blair, that the Palestinians have the right to go to the United Nations, but we want that in a better condition in order to achieve recognition and statehood. And the best way is to go to negotiations now. How do you see the statement of Mr. Blair?
I think the Palestinian president has repeated time and again that seeking recognition by the United Nations does not represent an alternative to negotiations. We are still committed to the idea of peaceful talks with Israel and a peaceful settlement to this issue by negotiations. But we have negotiated for 20 years, and 7 Israeli governments have proven themselves to be both unwilling and incapable of delivering when it comes to recognizing our rights, our national rights to self-determination and national independence. Israel simply doesn't want us to become a state, and we are determined to become a state, and we have tried the way of negotiations. The Israelis do not want us to be an independent people, but we are determined to be exactly this.
Now here the Israeli preparations on the ground are very clear in the West Bank, especially in the area of Jerusalem. They are supplying the settlers with arms and training them how to confront or attack the Palestinians. And every time the Israeli officials appear on the TV screens, they say the Palestinians breached Oslo Accord, and so Israel has the right to do whatever it wants when it comes to these accords. Do you think that the Israeli violence, if it happens here against the Palestinians, How would it be dealt with by the European governments and
Well,
the international community?
As a matter of fact, the Israeli violence has never stopped. The killing in Gaza has been going on up until a week ago. The most preferred option by the Israelis would be for them to see violence break out. They would love to portray us as a bunch of terrorists and violent-loving people, which we are not. We are a people who seeks their own independence, a good, peaceful future for our sons and daughters. That's what we want. But the Israelis like to see us all as gunmen. This is the easiest way to fight us here in Europe, to classify our struggle for freedom as a terrorist campaign against the civilized and civil society in Israel, which is not the case, of course. So I think our people would be best advised not to react in a way to the Israeli provocation, and to be firm facing these continual Israeli provocations.
The American Congress has warned weeks or months ago that the American administration might or should cut financial aid to the Palestinian National Authority unless the Palestinian leadership backs down on its decision. Do you think that the Americans are going to take such steps? Because we are going to the Security Council and this is the final decision of the president that we heard of.
Well, it's hard to tell. They're likely to do this or likely to not do this. But you may recall that this whole idea of seeking recognition by the UN was actually set in motion by Mr. Obama himself a year ago when he said that he would like to see an independent Palestinian state by the end of September 2011. And also the quartet has been, September itself has been designated by the quartet as a date for a successful completion of the negotiation. The Americans themselves wanted to seek the two-state solution, but when it comes to ourselves really seeking the recognition by the UN, the Americans wouldn't support us. So there is a big contradiction here in what the Americans said a year ago and what they are doing now. If will they cut the financial aid to the Palestinian Authority, that's something to be seen in the future.
نريد أن نذهب للأمم المتحدة لأسباب كثيرة منها قول أوباما.
When we come back here next year, we can have an agreement that will lead to a new member of the United Nations, an independent, sovereign state of Palestine living in peace with Israel.
ما دام قال هذا الكلام إذن هو مقتنع